Everyone, I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us. 3 more of the 17 missionaries who were taken hostage in Haiti are now free. Their Ohio-based ministry saying they're safe and in good spirits. 12 of those hostages still remain captive, though, as the 400 Mawuzo gang leaders spoke out in a video demanding $1 million in ransom for each one, threatening to kill them if demands are not met. Russian troops massing near the border of Ukraine, sparking fears of an invasion. Tensions higher now than any time since Russia seized control of parts of that country 7 years ago. The U.S. fearing thousands of Russian troops could be preparing for a full-scale military assault into Ukraine as President Biden prepares to talk to Vladimir Putin tomorrow. The trial of Ghislaine Maxwell enters its 2nd week. The socialite charged as an accomplice in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation. Her siblings appealing to U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland about her treatment behind bars, claiming she has been deprived of time with her legal counsel and food. Maxwell has pleaded not guilty. An enormous volcano erupting on Java Island in Indonesia. At least 14 people are dead, many more missing as Mount Semeru spews hot ash and smoke thousands of feet up into the air over the weekend and sending people scrambling to safety, destroying hundreds of homes and more than 30 schools. More than 1,000 people are now in rescue centers, unsure whether their homes have survived or not. Now to the growing concerns over Omicron. Health officials closely monitoring the spread of the new variant as the CDC puts new requirements in place for international travelers to the U.S. All air passengers over the age of 2 now required to show a negative COVID test no more than 24 hours before they board their flight into the United States. Or they need to show documentation that they have recovered from COVID in the past 90 days. New York City Mayor de Blasio also announcing a vaccine mandate for all private employers to combat the spread of the Omicron variant. ABC's Stephanie Ramos has more for us.
Health officials on alert as the Omicron variant spreads across the country with cases reported in at least 17 states.
We know we have, several dozen cases, and we're following them closely, and we are every day hearing about more and more probable cases, so that number is likely to rise.
30-year-old Peter McGinn from Minnesota is one of those cases being monitored. He tested positive for the Omicron variant. McGinn is fully vaccinated and received a booster. He attended an anime convention in New York City in late November. After flying home, he learned that one friend he went to the convention with tested positive for COVID.
I was just a little taken back to the fact that I, A, had COVID and B, it was the new one.
McGinn believes that he contracted the new variant not at the convention itself, but events after, when he and a group of about 30 people also vaccinated got together. Now, half of that group has tested positive for COVID.
I felt perfectly safe with the people that I was with, and so it never really crossed my mind to think that I had COVID. So it was more like those events outside of the con where I believe that the transmission took place.
It's unclear if the Omicron variant will be more severe or spread faster than the Delta variant.
We really got to be careful before we make any determinations. But thus far, the signals are a bit encouraging regarding the severity.
But officials stress that all eligible Americans roll up their sleeves and get that booster shot. Meanwhile, in Louisiana, thousands being tested after a COVID outbreak on a week-long international cruise. At least 17 confirmed cases on the Norwegian breakaway.
The cruise ship company saying in a statement, in part, in addition to requiring that 100% of guests and crew are fully vaccinated, we have implemented quarantine, isolation, and contact tracing procedures. And Kira, starting today, all air passengers with a flight departing to the U.S. from a foreign country will be required to show a negative COVID test taken within 24 hours instead of 3 days before they enter the U.S. All of this in an effort to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. Kira.
All right, our Stephanie Ramos, thanks so much. Well, let's talk more about this with physician at Stanford Children's Health, Dr. Alok Patel, also one of our contributors. So, Dr. Patel, we heard Dr. Fauci say just recently that the booster shots raise the level of protection. But as we heard in Stephanie's piece just there, one of the cases in Minnesota, that 30-year-old man who attended that anime convention in New York City, is fully vaccinated and received a booster. So, bottom line, do booster shots protect us from these new variants?
Good morning, Kira. And we still have enough evidence, if not anecdotal, but based on previous science, to suggest that boosters still work. Remember, this one person who went to the convention, he tested positive, had mild symptoms. Could it have been worse if he wasn't boosted? It's possible. Also, we have to think about the thousands of other people who may have come in contact, who were boosted, who aren't being reported right now because they're either asymptomatic or they have not gotten tested positive. So it's really hard to make these widespread speculations just based off one case. We still have enough evidence to tell people to go out and get boosted.
Right. Okay. And it's still unclear if the Omicron variant will be any more severe, because a lot of scientists are coming forward saying although it's more infectious, it looks less likely to lead to severe symptoms, as you just mentioned, and also hospitalizations. And now Mayor de Blasio there in New York just announced this vaccine mandate for all private employers to combat the spread. So, how should leaders across the country, you think, react as these new variants continue to emerge?
Well, I think, we have to look at this in two different parts right now. So the first thing is that leaders need to be not only protecting people, protecting their communities, but we're also trying to prevent another surge in hospitalizations in an already strained healthcare system, which, even mild to moderate cases can do that, especially if people are missing work, they have to go to doctor's offices and so forth. But Kira, here's what's kind of counterintuitive. It is not advantageous for the virus to be more virulent or kill more people, to put it bluntly. The virus wants to be more contagious because it wants to outcompete Delta, the Omicron variant. But if people are getting really sick and they're not spreading it, the virus doesn't want that scenario. And so, the way to think about this is that what the virus wants to do to be able to kind of propagate and survive is infect a lot of people, but kind of tone it down a little bit so that more people can pass it on, if that makes any sense. So right now, the early data is encouraging, but we need to see more.
Right. And what's your opinion on the effectiveness of these travel bans? There's been some outcry over the U.S. ban on certain African countries in response to this variant, including bans on some southern African countries where the variant has yet to even be detected.
I and my colleagues are a little confused about the travel bans because if you look at the amount of cases in South Africa and those surrounding countries, they're not astronomically higher than what we're seeing in the European Union. And there's no travel ban in effect in Europe. So when posed with this question of where is the evidence behind a travel ban, all we keep hearing from the White House and coronavirus task force is we're waiting to reevaluate them. We're waiting to see what the data shows. But that doesn't sit well with a lot of people because we want to exactly see why is this travel ban in effect and a good thing, and why is it not travel apartheid, which is what the World Health Organization called it. So I think it would build a lot more trust if we were transparent about why these travel bans are in effect to begin with.
All right, if you don't mind switching gears just a bit quickly, this new study by researchers at the Cleveland Clinic reporting that blood pressure spikes in adults during this pandemic, even more so in women than in men. Why are we seeing this increase, and what should people know about treatment and screening?
Well, Kira, I would never mind talking about preventative health because that is what this boils down to. So this study actually showed a small increase in blood pressure. If you look at the beginning of the pandemic in spring 2020 versus 2019, the important things to look at is there's a lot of factors that can raise blood pressure. Things like a sedentary lifestyle, stress, poor diet, alcohol, smoking, a lot of things which may have increased in certain populations in the United States during the pandemic. But also we have to consider blood pressure wasn't well controlled going into the pandemic. So you give people a barrier of access to healthcare, less preventative health services, and those blood pressure numbers are going to go up. And hypertension, defined as 130/80, can be a risk factor for a lot of diseases, kidney disease, heart disease, stroke, and so forth. So I'm hoping this is a little bit of a wake-up call for people to not only get into healthcare, but for people to be better about screening and lifestyle changes where needed.
Yeah, very good advice. And bring on the meditation. Dr. Patel, always good to see you.
Kira, thank you. Good to see you.
You've helped us all find our center on this Monday.
That's
all
what
right.
we're doing.
Well, that's right. Absolutely. Every time we talk. Thanks, Doc. Well, the parents of that 15-year-old accused of killing 4 students at Oxford High School in Michigan are now in custody. James and Jennifer Crumbly now facing manslaughter charges after a manhunt to find them when they failed to turn themselves in. Both parents have pleaded not guilty. And yesterday, the Detroit Lions paying tribute to one of the students who lost their lives. The NFL posting this photo of Jalen Elliott, who shares the number 42 with Oxford High School junior Tate Meyer that died in that shooting, wearing a jersey with Meyer's name. Trevor Ault has the latest for us from Michigan.
James and Jennifer Crumbly and their 15-year-old son are waking up in the Oakland County, Michigan jail. All of them accused of having a hand in the Oxford High School massacre that left 4 students dead. And as the community calls for justice, the prosecutor charging both parents with 4 counts each of involuntary manslaughter.
Are you trying to set a new standard, or is the evidence simply overwhelming in this case?
The facts of this case are so egregious.
Prosecutors say on Black Friday, James Crumbly brought his son with him to buy the weapon later used in the rampage. Prosecutors referencing these Instagram posts. The alleged shooter saying, "Just got my new beauty today." Jennifer Crumbly writing Mom and Son Day, testing out his new Christmas present. The day before the shooting, prosecutors say a teacher reported the suspect searching ammunition on his phone, after which Jennifer Crumbly texted her son, quote, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught." Then the morning of the shooting, prosecutors say another teacher reported a picture drawn by the teen that featured a person appearing to be shot and disturbing phrases like "the thoughts won't stop, help me," and "blood everywhere." The superintendent says the student claimed the drawing was part of a video game he was designing. The Crumbleys were called to school, but they resisted taking him home. Hours later, he allegedly walked out of a bathroom and started firing.
Medical assistance, multiple ambulances if possible, stays at the Meyerford Incident High School.
The alleged shooter is charged as an adult and pleaded not guilty to 24 charges, including 4 counts of first-degree murder. And Friday, as arrest warrants were issued for his parents, the Crumbleys were nowhere to be found, later located after midnight, tucked away in an empty commercial building in Detroit. Both parents pleading not guilty to all charges, their lawyer arguing the couple never intended to flee.
How are you pleading to count 1? Not guilty.
James Crumbly shaking his head at the prosecutor's accusations.
And many people have also been critical of the school's actions leading up to this shooting, and the superintendent is now calling for a transparent third-party investigation. We also want to mention the sheriff's office now says all but one of the injured students have been released from the hospital, and the final student being treated is in stable condition. Kira?
All right, Trevor Ault there in Pontiac, Michigan for us. Trevor, thanks. Well, coming up, as the Omicron variant cases rise in the U.S., concerns are growing about transmissibility and vaccine efficacy. When we come back, rare access inside Moderna as it responds to this new variant. Welcome back. It's been 12 days since South Africa first reported the Omicron variant to the World Health Organization, raising concerns around the world, and renewing uncertainty about the future of this pandemic. Our Martha Radix actually got an exclusive look inside Moderna headquarters, where they're already working on a new vaccine to fight Omicron as the threat from the variant grows.
2 years into a global pandemic, when things were starting to look up, a new worrisome variant, Omicron.
If you're worried about Omicron variant, the best thing to do is get fully vaccinated and then get your booster shot.
The reaction was swift. In just 1 day this week, more than 2.2 million vaccine doses administered, the highest single-day number in more than 7 months. The president of pharmaceutical giant Moderna, who spoke to us at the Cambridge, Massachusetts headquarters, says the makeup of the Omicron variant has the potential for a worst-case scenario.
What did you think when you first saw this variant? Did you just think, oh no, here we go again?
There was literally a list of 8 or 10 mutations that we never wanted to see show up in one variant of concern. And we opened this one up, and all but one of them was there. And the instant feeling was, oh, this isn't going to be good.
But the big question, just how much protection will the existing vaccines and boosters have against the new variant? The CEO of Moderna, Stéphane Bancel, roiled markets this week by predicting a significant drop in vaccine efficacy, saying there was, quote, no world in which vaccine effectiveness doesn't drop against the new variant.
Do you agree?
Well, I probably would have used different words, but I think the short answer is we don't have data yet to know for sure.
You said you would use different words than your CEO used. What words would you use?
Well, I think that there's a real risk that we're going to see a decrease in effectiveness of the vaccines. What I don't know is how substantial that is. Is it going to be the kind of thing that we saw with the Delta variant, which is ultimately the vaccines were still effective? Or are we going to see something more like a 50% decrease in efficacy, which would really mean we probably need to reboot the vaccines and update them?
Moderna scientists are not waiting the expected 2 to 3 weeks to find out. We traveled to the research lab and got a rare look inside, where Moderna says it could quickly create another shot specifically tailored to protect against Omicron.
Approximately 70% of the U.S. supply comes out of this facility.
Matt Barrows is Moderna's senior director of manufacturing. He says if necessary, their facilities are ready to mass produce the current vaccines and a new one simultaneously.
Do you have the facilities to do both and do them rapidly?
We do have the capacity to do both and do them fast.
But Dr. Hogue warns it would still be a waiting game.
We could probably produce tens of millions of doses in the first quarter, but not hundreds. And it really wouldn't be until the second quarter of next year that you'd be seeing those big step changes in terms of the number of doses made.
Just miles away from Moderna headquarters in Everett, Massachusetts, emergency room physician Aaron Beaumont is already seeing a winter surge and is bracing for Omicron.
I think we just don't have enough data yet, but I am a little bit worried.
You don't want to go through this again.
No, I don't want to go through that again. I was just reflecting back to what it was like in March and April of 2020, and that was a dark time.
A time when Dr. Beaumont was giving us regular, disturbing updates.
Once we do get our surge, I don't know where we're going to put these people. I think we've come a long way in terms of having vaccines and in knowing how to treat this disease. But yeah, I don't think any of us want to go back there.
Dr. Hogue says despite the uncertainty about Omicron, he is still hopeful that the finish line is in sight.
We really do expect this will end. And I'm still quite hopeful that 2022 will be a year where that happens. And so we can't rule out that there will be another surprise. But as we build higher and higher levels of immunity, we think the virus will run out of room.
And our thanks to Martha Raddatz for that report. Well, coming up, the domino effect of the supply chain crisis on the environment. Our Ginger Z reports right after the break. Welcome back to ABC News Live. The shipping backlog is adding fuel to an existing problem in the Los Angeles area. Poor air quality. Our Ginger Z has an inside look at the efforts.
Hi, I'm Ginger Z, and it's not too late. Okay, so welcome to the port of Long Beach, where you can at least see it. And yes, all of those ships, part of that backlog disaster that you've been hearing so much about.
The major backlog of container ships at the ports of LA and Long Beach.
The traffic jam on the high seas could be delaying your packages.
Shipments are stuck at ports in California.
For you or me, this is a backlog of goods, maybe a delayed couch or something as important as a wheelchair. But at the same time, for the folks who live around this port, it means sickening haze.
Yes, you can smell this. You feel it.
Farrell Golden and John Cross have lived in West Long Beach, the neighborhood that borders the port, for most of their lives.
West Long Beach area has been known since the mid-2005, 6, 7 as a diesel death zone.
The Diesel Death Zone, or Asthma Alley as it's sometimes called, surrounded by impure air.
We got a 710 freeway, which handles thousands and thousands of trucks to the east of us. To the north of us, we got the 405 freeway, which has trucks on it. To the west, we got rail yards, freeways, and refineries. And to the south, we got the port.
We can't take any more pollution.
They can't take any more. Yet in the last year, more ships means more trucks, more trains, and more pollution.
In the last year, with the surge of more container ships, have you noticed a difference?
Oh, yes.
You could turn around and clean your car, and after a couple of days, it's covered with black soot.
John wasn't exaggerating. We drove into the neighborhood and did our own unscientific test on a car. Some of these neighborhoods, people will wake up and they will actually have soot on their car. In neighborhoods like this, the Long Beach Alliance for Children with Asthma report that they have a higher asthma rate among residents than anywhere else in California. There's a direct correlation between air pollution and asthma.
Yes, there is. But that large body of evidence shows that diesel pollution and children's lungs don't mix. Children in particular, because their lungs are still developing. Even before this particular image, there was already an overwhelming amount of diesel pollution in our community.
The Port of Los Angeles is the busiest port in all the United States, with the Port of Long Beach not far behind. Roughly 40% of America's cargo comes through these ports.
The average number of container ships at the ports of Long Beach and LA, 16. Right now, more than 110. You can see so many of them stacked up. They wait for weeks at a time sometimes, and you can see the heavy line of smog and haze sitting right over where people live.
People are having to breathe in this stuff so that other people across the country can get cheap TVs. That's not fair.
Hector De La Torre is a member of the California Air Resources Board, or CARB. It's a state agency that regulates air quality. A study that they did back in March shows the increase in port traffic was equivalent to the nitrogen oxide emissions of nearly 6 million cars. And that was before the latest surge.
Is it 1-to-1 where more container ship means more emissions, more haze, more smog?
It does in a lot of ways, meaning it isn't just the ships, right? Once they get here, then all of these containers end up on a truck or on a train that pollute the communities as well. So there is a whole movement of pollution, not just offshore, but it comes onshore and then through our communities.
But you can't control how a ship filters or doesn't filter.
No, because there is no international body that regulates them. We can control them when they're right here.
California's air quality rules are about as tight as they come. The Air Resources Board makes ships that are near the California shore plug in to local power so that they can turn off the diesel engines, reducing emissions.
70% of the toxic effect of air pollution comes from diesel. We have to reduce that. What we want to do going forward is to change how we do goods movement to make it zero emission. The ships, when they're here, the trucks, when they're on the road, be zero emission, meaning either battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell.
Not only will zero-emission ships and vehicles be good for the health of the port neighbors, but it's benefiting all of us. Think about it. Less idling trucks and ships means less carbon dioxide warming the planet.
And this isn't science fiction. In November, the first fully autonomous electric cargo ship was unveiled in Norway. The ship has as many batteries as 100 Tesla cars and prevents as much as 678 tons of carbon dioxide a year from entering the atmosphere. Vessels like this are sorely needed. The global shipping industry emitted more than 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide in 2018. Unfortunately, the electric ship in Norway is only good for short trips. It isn't ready to make long-haul crossings. Until then, California ports can begin to tackle the problem by making other vehicles zero-emission.
We're on it. Just this last budget, the California legislature approved $2.3 billion for zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles in California.
Wow.
$2.3 billion. That's bigger than some states' budgets. And we are putting that into this because we want to drive the market to switch over.
For now, the ports are asking ships to idle farther offshore to help reduce air pollution right along the coastline. They're going to push them to 150 miles away and then call them and have them come in. The people here say that probably won't be enough. It's going to end up being about congestion, about volume. That will have to change, and then it won't be too late.
And our thanks to Ginger Z. Well, that does it for this hour. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you right back here at 3 p.m. Eastern with Terry Moran. Until then, stay safe and have a beautiful Monday.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.